you, but let me first to greet specifically the coordinator of the Interdisciplinary Center of Social Science of the University of Açores, Professor Pilar Damião, also the executive director of the Açores Youth Observatory, Professor Fernando Diogo, and also the rest of the members here, Professor Ana Paulus. Also would like to especially greet the speakers, Professor Maria Stoilova, Sara Pereira and Francisco Souza, and of course extend the greetings to all the presents in this webinar. On behalf of the Regional Secretary for Youth, Professional Qualification and Employment, Professor Maria João Carreiro, and on my behalf also, I would like to greet everyone and of course highlight the relevance of the theme that underlies this webinar. I would also like to high point the role that the Açores Youth Observatory has had over the years in reflecting on the problems and issues of Azorean youth, and the contribution to characterize the profile of young people in the Açores, which is essential for the adequacy of public policies for the young population. I would also like to emphasize at this moment the strengthening of the importance of synergy between the University of the Açores and this regional government, which allows in the most varied areas of governance that public policies be better founded, validated, and of course evaluated by the critical, reflective and scientific thinking of the university community. I would like to say also that in the last 3 years, we have come up with the disruptive moment in the global world, the pandemic by COVID-19. In fact, the scourge of public health, in addition to the tragic effects on the health and well-being of the, world's population, it has highlighted the most diverse weakness in all societies of the planet. The interdependencies of the global market, stressing Europe's weak ability to produce goods and products to combat the disease, the inability of public health responses to pandemic events, the inadequacy of working conditions and infrastructure to unexpected phenomena, and inhibitors on on-site work, among other problems and weaknesses of the system in the face of unexpected emergency situations. On the other hand, the pandemic has, in a surprisingly tragic way, evidenced the weak competence and digital literacy of Portuguese society, and in the Açores in particular, with a greater focus on our young people. In a fully connected world with at least apparent democratization of digital tools and media, one would expect that young people would fully master technology and digital instruments, that all young people have an adequate technological device, tablet, laptop, or any other device like desktop computer, that almost all Azorean families had installed adequate home internet network. However, reality has shown us a different truth. The digital literacy of Azoreans and young people in the Açores was insufficient, especially in the knowledge and use of digital work and administrative tools. Many young people do not have a computer or similar device, or in other cases, when they do have a computer, it's in poor condition or outdated, or even had to share with their parents or siblings. And finally, in many cases, the internet network was inappropriate or non-existent. Thus, the youth online study recently carried out by the Youth Observatory and this webinar take particular attention in the reflection of the literacy and digital empowerment of young Azoreans. Indeed, the acceleration of the digital transition caused largely by the need for remote work and classes in virtual environments, consequences of the pandemic and successive confinements challenged society to change behavior and boosted measures and public policies that would enhance the literacy and digital empowerment of young people and their families. The delivery of free digital manuals in the 5th and 8th years in school year 2022-2023 and the extension of this initiative to the 6th and 9th grade in the next school year, as well as the free availability of tablets, laptops to the young people of these grades, clearly show the intention of this regional government to create favorable conditions to a greater and better relationship with new technology. On the other hand, the Regional Secretariat for Youth, Professional Qualification and Employment, through the Regional Directorate for Youth, created the e-associativism program, which aims to capacitate youth associations with adequate technology and digital means, and also through the Regional Directorate of Professional Qualification and Employment, will create in 2023 the program called Açores Digital, a measure to support training in the area of technology and digital resources, which aims to educate young people in the areas of information technology, with special emphasis on cybersecurity, programming language, data analysis, and business intelligence. On the other hand, a profound reflection on digital media education will be central. In an online world where disinformation and fake news prevail, and where forms of violence and virtual abuse grow, it is of the utmost importance to concentrate efforts on the training of young people so they can be prepared to filter content and messages, to minimize the risk of exposure to virtual violence, and to the safe use of the internet, reducing the risk of theft of data and sensitive private content. I will end by restating the political intention to assure more favorable conditions to empowering our young people in digital skills and means, to ensure the democratization of internet access, and at the same time to ensure the promotion of digital literacy and media education, so that we can have more autonomous, competent, and prepared young people for the effective, safe, and adequate use of the online world. It is in this way also with initiatives such as this webinar, where we reflect on the skills and digital literacy of young people, that we all contribute, academic society, public and private entities, to a better perception of the current state of digital empowerment of young people, and to the thinking of certain strategies that improve or can improve levels of youth digital proficiency. Thank you.
So let's, Braga, thank you so much for your words, for your kind words, and very rich words, for your insights. So thank you so much. So I just got an email from the rector from the University of Açores, mentioning that the rector wasn't able to be here with us today. She is traveling. So, and even the vice rector was supposed to come, but he has something coming to his I'm sorry, I'm just forgetting the word. So he couldn't be here as well. So, but they asked me to mention that they congratulate initiative, and they would be very pleasant to be here with us today, but they just want to welcome you here, even online, virtually at University Açores, but they aren't able to be here with us today. So saying that, and I will close the opening session, and I will start. Let's start our Digital Youth Skills and Literacy International webinar, and I'll present firstly Maria Stoyanova, and afterwards we will have Professor Sara Pereira and then Professor Francisco José Rodrigues Souza. So Professor Maria Stoyanova, she's a postdoctoral researcher at the Department of Media and Communications from London School of Economics and Political Sciences. She holds a PhD from the University of Leeds on gender and generation, women's experiences of the transition from socialism in Bulgaria. So congratulations, what a great topic, congratulations. Her area of expertise is at the intersection of child rights and digital technology, with a particular focus on the opportunities and risks of digital media use in the everyday lives of children and young people, data and privacy online, digital skills, mental health, and pathways to harm and well-being. So her recent projects include Global Kids Online, EU Consent, Y skills, youth skills, children online research and evidence, dynamic interplay of online risk and resilience in adolescence, and children's data and privacy online and platforming families. So Professor Maria Stoyanova, thank you so much for being here again. And the word is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pilar, for the introduction. I hope you can now see my screen. A very extensive introduction with lots of projects that I've been involved with, but I would like to use this opportunity, and thank you very much for the invitation, to talk about one specific project, which is youth skills, or Y skills as we call it. And it's an international project that I'm going to present some of the findings of this. And for those of you who are interested to follow up, one of the countries where we're doing a survey is in fact Portugal, so you will be able to see a bit more about the skills of the children in Portugal. But I want to start with an overview of what we mean by digital skills, and then to provide you a bit more information on some findings that we did, particularly in relation to mental health. And it was already mentioned, mental health was one of the topical issues over the past 2 years as a result of the COVID pandemic. And there's a crisis going on. Many people describe it in this way in relation to young people. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. But just to start with what we mean by digital skills, for example, the United Nations agency, which is responsible for the global measurement of the adoption of ICTs, defines digital skills in terms of their expected outcomes. So to quote, this is the ability to use ICTs in ways that help individuals to achieve beneficial, high quality outcomes in everyday life, for themselves and others, and that also includes being able to reduce potential harm associated with more negative aspects of digital engagement. So that kind of definition leaves open the question of which abilities people actually need, as well as what are the outcomes that are at stake. So in the Y Skills project that I mentioned, which is a research collaboration designed to study the relationship between digital skills and children's well-being, we have identified 4 dimensions of digital skills, and you can see the report here on the right of the slide that you can follow up with more details about that and the work of my colleague from the LSE, Ellen Helsper, that she did with colleagues. So as you can see, there are 4 pillars of digital skills. So the first one relates to the technical and operational aspects, and this refers to the ability to manage and operate ICTs and the technical affordances of devices, platforms, applications. So this includes from button knowledge, if we can call it that, to settings management, to programming, a wide range of things really. So the second pillar of digital skills is the information navigation and processing skills, and here we're talking about the ability to find, to select, to critically evaluate digital sources of information. Moving to the third column, this refers to communication and interaction skills, and this is the ability to use different digital media and technological features to interact with others, to build networks, as well as to critically evaluate the impact of these mediated communications on oneself and on others. And the 4th pillar is the content creation and production skills. And here we talk about the ability to create digital content, to understand how this content is produced, how it's published, and how it generates impact. So each of these skills dimensions has critical and functional aspects. As you can see, they are rich sort of cross-cutting elements. And the functional aspects, they cover the practicalities of being able to do something, while the critical cover the understanding of the implications of these actions. So what is the impact of what you're doing online, how it affects you, how it affects others, and things like this. And the critical aspects might also involve decisions when not to use technology, when it's not to one's own benefit. So we wanted to see what helps children to develop digital skills, so the antecedents to digital skills, and then also whether having better skills results in better outcomes for young people, so the consequences. So what we did was we conducted a comprehensive systematic evidence review of the existing literature and studies around digital skills. And we found a number of antecedents and consequences, as you can see here on the image. For example, things that can support or prevent the building of digital skills that can relate to the personal attributes of the child or to factors related to the social environment. They can relate to the ICT environment that the child is part of or exposed to. They can relate to online activities of the child, or even country level factors. What is the legislation? What is the regulation? What is the digital ecology, as we call it, that the child is exposed to? So all these factors contribute to the building of digital skills, but also can act as a preventing factors if they're not up to speed. On the other side, the consequences from having or not having digital skills that can have impact on how a young person approaches digital technologies. They can impact their offline activities, but also a range of other factors such as their well-being, what their learning outcomes are, what they do when they are online, and also the risk of harm, which is usually one of the things that we are quite concerned about, and want to know whether digital skills actually help to prevent the risk of harm. So we wanted to know the 4 pillars of digital skills, which ones of those contribute to better outcomes. So based if anyone wants to follow up, again, this is the report. All of this is kind of very whistle stop at these findings, which took a lot of time to gather, and there's much more behind this. But we published some of the results in an article which looks at which of the dimensions of digital skills are actually more beneficial. And I just want to draw your attention very briefly to 3 main points. So the first one is that teaching or promoting technical skills by themselves is a problematic strategy, even though this is a very popular or widely used strategies when we teach in schools how children need to use the technical parameters to do something. But technical skills, for example, can be linked to more online risks. They can be linked to reduced civic participation amongst young people. More positively, we found that gaining information skills is much more promising. So these skills are generally linked to beneficial outcomes. For example, more information skills tend to be linked to more civic participation, to more online opportunities, to higher academic grades, to reduce online risks, and to more privacy protective behaviors online by young people. So also positively for young people's outcomes are certain combinations of digital skills dimensions, especially providing that gaining information skills is included in the mix. So I think this is an important message for educators and to government about the need for a wide diversity of digital skills, but particularly for the ones that are a bit more critical and information related. So moving on to what we wanted to do with this information, we wanted to see whether all young people are equally able to benefit or some are exposed to higher risks. So we looked at the role of vulnerability when it comes to digital skills, and specifically we looked at mental health. So here on the screen you can see some of the research questions that we had in a qualitative study that we did. So one of them was whether the different dimensions of digital skills have different outputs of this or different contributions. The second one is whether digital skills actually aid or worsen mental health outcomes, and we want to see what the implications of these are. So to answer these questions, we conducted an in-depth qualitative interviews with 62 young people between the ages of 12 and 22 living in Norway and the UK. And they had experienced internet-related trauma of different kinds, whether it's cyberbullying or online sexual exploitation, or whether they've been in contact or using online information that can be potentially harmful, for example, related to self-harm or eating disorders. They had this kind of internet-related trauma experiences. And also they had mental health difficulties of varying severity, as some of them had already received treatment. So what did we find out about the digital skills of these young people, which we can describe as vulnerable in relation to their mental health? So we found that the young people we spoke to are actually active and competent internet users. They have a range of sophisticated digital skills. There were varying degrees of skill amongst the participants, and the younger adolescents were as a whole less competent than the older peers, but the skills were gradually developing over time. And overall, the young people we spoke to were fairly highly skilled with sophisticated knowledge of the digital ecology as well. So we also found that young people with mental health difficulties were developing particular digital skills. They cover the 4 dimensions that I was already speaking about, but they also seem to go a little bit beyond them to reflect their mental health experiences. For example, the skill of developing or identifying a color's algorithm, or recognizing the extreme space or a dangerous person, or maybe more positively, the skills involved in knowing how to game the algorithm to make one's feed more positive space, or how to locate safe spaces online, or how to locate trustworthy people. So the quotes here, in the first one, you can see a young girl talking about how she uses her digital skills to signpost mental health information, which is helpful for her. So she's using it as a shortcut when she needs these kind of supportive materials. And the second quote is quite the opposite. It's of a young person who is actually using quite sophisticated digital skills to bypass the regulations of the digital platforms, going across platforms to share extreme and sometimes potentially harmful contents with others. So this shows that digital skills can be used in both beneficial and problematic ways, and that sophisticated skills don't necessarily make for better outcomes. So the question is, why is this? We were thinking, like, if young people are at risk online, if they're vulnerable, if they're experiencing harm, it's likely that they have less digital skills. And if we teach them the skills, they're going to be safer. But that didn't turn out to be the case. So why? And given the challenges that young people face, they don't always manage to put their skills into practice, especially if a mental health difficulties is impacting upon their functioning. One important reason for this is that digital skills are intertwined with social life skills that young people are developing. These skills, including through their experiences with mental health difficulties. So they're not necessarily skills that they have, but skills that they need to be developing during this important time of their life. And this development of digital skills takes place during a complex developmental period for the young people. And this period is characterized by exploration, by risk-taking, by vulnerability as well. So it's not surprising that some young people are acting against their own knowledge of what is safe and what is sensible. For example, they were taking risks, they were even daring themselves. And this may not actually reflect the lack of skill or even irrational response, but rather it's a different set of digital skills and purposes, we would argue. But we also found that there is another important factor, the design of the digital environment, and that on its own posed additional challenges to young people. So independent of digital skill, the affordances may result in even riskier online engagement. An algorithm can act as a distorting mirror. It magnifies the problematic content. It may push young people with mental health vulnerabilities down a spiral of ever more overwhelming, upsetting, or extreme content. So several young people describe becoming aware of how social media algorithms promote problematic content. Here you have the first quotation talks exactly about that, how a young person started noticing this trend of what I eat in a day and started feeling very cautious about how much food she takes, and gradually developed an unhealthy relationship with food because of being exposed to this kind of material. So the young people we spoke to used their digital skills and devoted considerable efforts to anticipating and managing these potential risks, trying to avoid the upset that sometimes the internet was throwing of them. They were recognizing that their own triggers were hard to achieve, how these triggers arise, and the kind of digital skills that this involves to, recognizing one's own trigger. It's a digital skills that combines self-knowledge with understanding of the digital ecology, but this is also a task that is really hard to do. So when things go wrong, it's hard sometimes to undo the harm, as the second quote suggested. Once you see the negative content, you can't really unsee this. So just to sum up some conclusions from what we've learned from this project and the different elements of it, we've definitely seen that digital skills can support young people's positive outcomes, but they're not the silver bullet that we think sometimes that they are. They don't provide all the solutions that we need, so they need to be part of comprehensive measures. Teaching, for example, should cover different types of digital skills, as I was mentioning, the different dimensions, not just the technical or e-safety messages, which tends to be what educational strategies focus on. It should cover or offer a balance between the functional and the critical aspects, with critical aspects being absolutely crucial to young people being able to recognize the risks and knowing how to counteract. But we also think that there are other actors that need to take part in the conversations and in the changes. Industry and tech companies, for example, should design with young people and their specific needs in mind, especially thinking about vulnerable young people. And by vulnerable, we can even mean young people with low digital skills, because in today's digitized society, having low skills can create vulnerability. Governments should also consider regulation to limit the excessive risks that are posed to young people's safety by the actions of commercial providers. And quite importantly, young people ought to be consulted about their needs and preferences, because sometimes they have their own views of what is important to them. So this was really a whistle stop across a large number of reports. So this is the website where you can follow up on all of this, because sometimes I know it can be difficult to digest. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Maria Stoilova. Thank you so much. It was very, very informative, very insightful, and your findings they're very important for government, for scholars, for professors, for teachers, for educators in general. So that's incredible, for parents in general as well. So this is quite very insightful. Thank you so much for your input in this webinar. I will leave the questions to the end, to the debate. And now I will pass the words to Professor Sara Pereira.
Hello.
Hello. I will be briefly presenting and give you some information about your biography. So Professor Sara Pereira, she has a PhD in Child Studies, specializing in media education at University of Minho. She's an associate professor with aggregation at the Institute of Social Sciences, Department of Communication Sciences at University of Minho. She's chair of the Media Education Research section of the International Association for Media and Communication Research, co-coordinator of the Observatório on Media Information Literacy, co-author of the radio program Ouvido Crítico, Critical Ear, broadcast weekly on Antena 1, former director of the Department of Communication Sciences, former director of the Masters in Communication, Citizenship and Education, and a researcher at the Communication and Society Research Center at University of Minho. Her main research interests are on children, young people, and the media, the rights of expressions and participation of children and young people, media literacy, media publics and practices. She has coordinated several national and European projects, and is the author of several publications in these areas. Her research projects recently involved BU, study of the experiences and expressions of children and young people about the media. She's co-responsible researcher of the project Comodig, Competences of Digital and Media Literacy in Portugal, and team member of the project Verdad y Ética en las redes sociales. My Spanish is really bad. So it's kind of perceptions and influence, educative influence in young users of Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Professor Sara Pereira, she will be talking today about just a few moments. She will be talking about children and young people as media consumers. The next step is participation. So Professor Sara Pereira, thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I will share my screen now. Just a minute. Okay. So I think you are seeing now watching now my screen. So good afternoon, everybody. I would like to start by thanking you for the invitation to this seminar and for the opportunity to share some of my work with you. And I also want to congratulate the work of University of Açores and also the Youth Observatory, because it's a great work that you do in this context. So thank you very much for sharing with me this opportunity to say something about children and young people and digital and media literacy, and focusing in particular in their participation rights. The communication I bring you today, entitled Children and Young People as Media Consumers, the next step is participation, is based on the research project I'm currently coordinating, but it also draws on the results of other studies in which I have been involved. The idea of this communication is to show how we need to take a step forward or jump to another level regarding digital and media literacy, and how we need to focus on the development of skills related to production, creation, and the participation of children and young people. So this analysis is based on the assumption that involving youth and media production and involving youth in media production and the participation will lead to their empowerment, serving as a pillar for media literate citizens. And as argued by authors like Lench and Aito, shifting youth identity from that of a media consumer to a media producer is an important vehicle for developing youth voice, creativity, agency, and new forms of literacy in a media saturated era. So first of all, let me introduce you the BU project, the project about a study on children and young people's experiences and expressions of the media. This is an ongoing project since April 2021 at the Communication and Society Research Center at the University of Minho, and it is funded by the Portuguese Foundation for Science and Technology. This project was designed based on the results of other studies carried out with children and young people here in Portugal, and I will very briefly present below some results of these studies. Well, the main objectives of this project, BU or by you, are that is in this slide, to listen to young people about the presence, role, and importance of the media in society and in their daily lives, to analyze their media uses and practices in a convergent perspective, to explore their understanding about the media, to promote an active and creative expression about their media experiences, to identify and analyze the main areas in which children express themselves on the media, and to provide the expression and participation of children and young people through media and school media. So the idea is also to improve school media as means for the participation of the students in the school context. One of the major purpose of this project is to listen to children, to give them a voice and promote their participation. After in a first phase, we have mapped their media practices and have collected their perceptions about media. In the second phase that we start in last month, the aim is to promote their creative expression on and through the media. For this, we launched the campaign Express Yourself, aimed at all children up to 18 years old, and shout out, speak out, get going, express yourself is the motto of this campaign launched in Portugal, but which aims to reach all children of the community of Portuguese-speaking countries. The results of this campaign are materialized in the BU digital mural that we create for children and young people, a mural that aims to be a place where children and young people can express themselves on various topics related to media, but also about current affairs, rights and citizenship, school, friends, and whatever. And on this mural, they will also find some quizzes that aim to promote their media literacy. So this mural is only available in Portuguese, but can be accessed at muralbu.pt. At this moment, I would like to invite you to watch a video of this campaign Express Yourself, which will help you better understand the objective of this campaign. I hope that it runs well. Let's see. Just a minute. Need to, okay.
Somos água.
Sorry, I will put in beginning. Okay.
Uns dizem que somos fogo, outros dizem que somos água. Uns dizem que somos paralelos, outros perpendiculares. Uns dizem que sim, outros dizem que não. Para uns somos alfa, para outros somos Z. Vivemos num planeta desigual. À nossa volta há um mundo de conflitos. Temos muita informação. Temos ferramentas para fazer a diferença. Mas consigo. Dominamos muita tecnologia. Temos outras formas de entretenimento. Somos Instagrammers, TikTokers, YouTubers, streamers. Mas não deixamos de ser leitores.
Somos tudo isto, mas queremos ser mais.
Mais tolerantes. Perseverantes, apaixonantes, contagiantes. Esta é a hora de gritarmos, de nos fazermos ouvir, de batermos as panelas e berrarmos às janelas. Chegou a altura da mudança, é a nossa vez ao volante. Chama toda a atenção, sobe ao palco e liga o altifalante. O presente és tu a decidir. Usa o teu poder, este é o momento de agir. Usa a tua palavra, a tua projeção. Junta-te a nós, participa na discussão, junta-te ao BU, grita, diz, faz, expressa-te. Este é um projeto da Universidade do Minho para crianças e jovens até aos 18 anos que querem ouvir-te, saber o que pensas, conhecer as tuas histórias. Produz um vídeo, podcast, fotografia, desenho, pintura, texto, poema, dança, música ou outra forma criativa para te expressar sobre a importância dos média na tua vida ou sobre assuntos que te preocupam ou interessam. Protege a tua identidade e privacidade e não uses conteúdos sujeitos a direitos de autor. Envia as tuas produções para bio@ics.uminho.pt. Para saberes mais, consulta moralbu.pt. BU by you.
So returning to the presentation, why a project centered on the expression and the participation of children and young people? In another project I was involved in, which aimed to analyze the digital and media literacy competencies of basic and secondary school children and young people, they were asked how they learn to use the media. This graph concerns the sample of secondary school students, a total of 950 students. And as you can see, 87 answered that they learned by themselves, followed by help from classmates and friends with 45%, and in third place, the help of parents with 35%. Even help from siblings received a higher percentage than the 5 items that concern the school context. And I think this should make us reflect on the role of school nowadays. Data from the same project and the same sample also show that young people reveal better technical operational skills than competencies of expression and critical analysis. And in other projects related to media literacy, the competencies of critical reading and analysis of information is the one that always appears with the worst performance. So in another project, this is an European project called Transmedia Literacy. That this project involved 80 countries. We analyzed the relationship between formal and informal learning of children and young people, and what we found was a huge gap between formal and informal education. This paper is published in this journal, is the Comunicação journal, so you can see more information about this gap. But we found that informal learning contributes to the development of skills that are also useful from a school viewpoint. But it is not, this informal learning, it is not highly valued by most of the teachers, and also the teachers and the students have recognized this. So let us now focus on some data from the BU project based on the application of a questionnaire to a sample of 1,031 children and young people between 11 and 18 years old, of which 55% are girls, 45% are boys, and 3% prefer not to say their sex. So this graph shows access to technologies and media is not a problem for this sample. I must say this for this sample of children and young people, and the same has been shown in other studies that you carried out here in Portugal, mainly in the north of Portugal. So this is a generation that is connected to technologies. Media use occupies a large part of their daily time. However, I would like to leave a note for the part of that is often more invisible, which is the one that, although residual in this case, still doesn't have access to the internet, for example. And at the beginning, the Dr. Eladio Braga talked about the democratization of the internet, and we need to continue to work on this democratization, of course. So most of students in sample also have social media profiles, many of them on multiple social networks. Instagram and WhatsApp stand out as the most used networks. And a surprising fact in this analysis, but I don't know, perhaps expected, is the fact that 89% of the 11 and 12 years old children also have a profile on several social networks. They have 11 and 12 years old. So only 11% of the 357 children of this age do not have a profile on social networks, and this is really a surprise for us because they are too young to have a profile, and we don't know, and parents don't know also most of the time what they are doing in this social network that they access from their mobile phone. So perhaps also not too surprising is the ranking of the media that assume greater importance in their lives. The mobile phone and the internet stand out in first and second place for all participants. Books, especially school books, take the third place for students in 6th grade, but their importance decrease for students in 9th and 12th grade. The importance of other media is more residual. A point worth noting is the fact that the media to which they attribute the function of informing, the role of information, are those which are of less importance in their lives, are those that they don't use, and these are, for example, newspapers, radio, magazines, and even television. We will now take a look at some data from the 59 focus groups conducted with a subsample of the students who completed the survey. Participate in these focus groups a total of 390 children and young people, also aged between 11 and 18 years old. And this data coming from the focus groups is essential for my purpose here with this presentation, because it shows us from the young people's own words their perception of the difficulties they have in expressing themselves, forming an opinion, and participating. So in the focus group, we try to find out that what these children and young people understand by participation, what and how they participate, and the reasons for not participating. Here, I will focus on what they told us about the difficulties and constraints they find in participating. These field notes from the focus groups are very rich in this respect, because they indicate to us also the difficulties in participating in the discussion that we have proposed to them in this focus group. So we were able to observe, for example, the difficulty in having opinion about everyday issues, about the issues that they talk with to their friends. They have difficulty in expressing themselves on current world issues that interest and concern them, but they were mainly afraid to give their opinion because they didn't know if it was right or wrong. This is what they told us, and this is why they were afraid, and sometimes why they don't have an opinion about current aspects, current issues, current things that are in their everyday life. On this slide, we look at some of the reasons given by children and young people for not participating. The reasons are common to all students. We don't find big differences between the three age groups, although all the students aged 17 and 18 argue better and are more explicit about the reasons for non-participation, and also reflect more on these reasons. For example, these students speak more about the lack of competencies to express themselves and to participate, and they also reflect on the context in which their opinions are not considered and are not valued, and they give as example the school. All students consider that the family is the context where they feel most comfortable to speak and to give their opinion. And they also consider that it is in the family where they feel most listened to. So they speak more in the context family than in the other context, of course, also with their friends and colleagues, but they don't feel feel comfortable to give an opinion, for instance, in the class between the other colleagues, in front of their teachers, and so on. So moving on to the final considerations, in the promotion of digital and media literacy, I think it is essential to consider the three major categories of rights set out in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, adopted by the United Nations in 1989. And these categories are protection, provision, and participation, and to work on these rights with regard to technologies and the media. It seems to me that in general, the work then is focused on the rights to provision and protection, but of course we need to insist and persist in these categories of rights. But I think now we need to consider more and better the right to participation and make it our next step of intervention with youth, and also the next step in our research. So to conclude, I think it is important to highlight the importance of promoting a participatory culture at school, but also in other contexts in society, in order to contribute to the formation of more and better informed citizens, more highlighted in favor of a better citizenship. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Gostara Pereira. It was incredible to listen to you about your project. And it's quite interesting, the findings that you got to achieve. It seems like there's no space in the public sphere for children and for young people. And sometimes you think they don't have, their opinions are not worth enough to be part of the debates, but they are. And they are citizens as well, and they need this what you really promote, and this create a more deliberative and participatory culture. That's very, very important for our future democracies, especially for our future of our democracies, critical citizens. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now I will pass the words to one of our researchers from 6ª OAC, Professor Francisco José Rodrigues Souza. Let me see. Oh, yes, I see you now. Professor Francisco Souza is an associate professor at the Faculty of Social and Human Sciences of the University of the Azores, vice president of the Faculty of Social and Human Sciences of our university. He's external collaborator of CX, Research Center on Child Studies, co-convener of Network 3, European Educational Research Association, and coordinator of the specialization program in e-learning between 2014 and 2016. He's an integrated researcher at 6ª OAC, Interdisciplinar Center of Social Sciences of the University of the Azores, and his main research interests are on curriculum relevance, curriculum policy, design of virtual learning environments. The research projects he's recently involved are potential EGAD, potential of distance learning on the promotion of geographic inclusion of the Azores. Other project is the characterization of free time activities and its impact, financed by the regional government of the Azores. Another one, curricular appropriations of history, geography, and regional culture in the Azores and Rio de Janeiro. Health promoting foods, in a school context, more knowledge, better growth in the context of contest Health Literacy 2014. It was founded by the Kalou School Banking Foundation, and enhancing curriculum relevance in the context of lifelong learning program, which is also founded, I guess, by FCT, the Foundation for Science and Technology of the Azores. And Professor Francisco Souza will be talking about virtual learning environments for young students, issues of design and inclusion. So thank you so much for being here, and you have the word.
Thank you, Pilar, and thank you, Fernando, Diogo, for inviting me for this webinar. My contribution here is very modest and marginal. I'm not an expert in youth. My PhD is in curriculum theory and development, and for the past 10 years, I've become more interested in educational technology, with a special emphasis on online learning in the context of either distance learning or either in the context of designing virtual learning environments as a tool that can be also used for face-to-face instruction. Now I'll also share my presentation. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, okay, virtual learning environments. As I told you, I've been interested in the design of virtual learning environments, specifically in a low-cost context, because our university is not rich. So we work with mostly with platforms that are accessible to anyone in the world that has an internet connection. Obviously, I'm talking about platforms such as Moodle, which are cheap. Virtual learning environments are electronic information systems that support learning processes, and they are considering the basic enablers of e-learning nowadays. As I told you, I became interested for these issues for the past 10 years because we live in an archipelago with 9 islands, and I've had students in at least 2 islands for all these years. Our university has 3 campi, and the fact that I have students in 2 islands has somehow prompted me to think about this and try to develop a model that could be useful in this situation, a model for providing some online instruction. And this also raises issues of inclusion, especially student inclusion, other kinds of inclusion, including faculty inclusion, institutional inclusion, but one of my main interests is geographical inclusion, because our 9 islands are very different from one another in terms of size, population, power, and so on. And this, again, raises issues of inclusion and the issue of to what extent can higher education provided online to some extent can or cannot help inclusion. For those who are not so familiar with us, we live here in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. We are 9 islands. As Pilar mentioned, I'm coordinating a research project called Região, which is funded by the Regional Board of Science and Technology. And the main aim of this project is to study the potential of distance education in the promotion of geographical inclusion in the Azores. To what extent a young student who lives in a small island can benefit from these technologies in his or her access to higher education. These are the main objectives of the project: to understand Azorean students' experiences of distance education, to understand how residents in peripheral parts of the region, how interested they are in online programs that can be provided by our university, and also to evaluate the receptiveness of prospective students to models that we have already developed at the University of the Azores. We've collected data mostly through questionnaires and interviews with students, with professors, with school leaders. This project is a kind of an umbrella project which hosts a smaller project that I've developed before, but it continues to be developed year after year, which is a project more focused on the design of virtual learning environments for supporting the courses that I teach, either in the context of full e-learning, I mean totally online, or in the context of face-to-face instruction with the use of some online tools. So I've developed virtual learning environments for all these years, and I try to improve those virtual learning environments by using some research inspired by developmental research, educational design research, which is in turn based on the idea that we can develop a product or an educational intervention and study that same development and improve the design of that same product by collecting data from the users, from the students in this case, and using that data for that same improvement. So I'll try to briefly explain how I design these learning environments, and then I will present some findings from this study. And also some findings that are not directly related to these virtual learning environments. For example, data that is more related to students of secondary schools in the Azores and their ambitions, their views about their higher education in the future, and the extent to which online learning can be involved in that process, and the extent to which it might help inclusion or not. So I've tried to develop a model called APA, meaning modular, asynchronous, participative, and emergent. Modular because I divide the semester in modules. Asynchronous because communication is predominantly asynchronous, participative because the students are heard in the process, in the data I collect from questionnaires that I send to the students this data is analyzed and it is used to improve the design of the virtual learning environment itself. And it's emergent because it's changing all the time. It's new in this context and so on. We work in a low-cost logic, as I told you. We use Moodle platform, which is cheap, which is free, indeed. And many professors use the Moodle platform in a very basic way by uploading files into the platform in order for those files to be downloaded by the students, and not some of the professors will do some more sophisticated activities like involving the students in participation in forums and so on, but the design of such an environment might look like this. This is a kind of tedious, dull, and we've tried to design environments that are not so tedious by having some principles of design in mind, trying to use color and shapes, despite the limitations of Moodle, in order to make the learning environment more attractive than this that you're seeing now. It will probably never be as attractive as an environment in Twitter or Instagram or in the platforms that are popular amongst youth, but we try to make it a little bit more colorful. Anyway, this slide that I am showing you has already is already involved in our concerns about the need of logic for pedagogical organization. It's not just about uploading and downloading files, it's also about having consistency in the design. So I told you that we organize the virtual learning environment in modules, and each module might have always this structure: tarefas do módulo, tasks of the module, objectives and criteria for assessment, a forum in order to discuss ongoing issues, and it can be also evaluated, and evaluation of the module. Well, this is the same thing with more color and shape, which is our attempt to make the environment a little bit more attractive. This is an example of a panel, an entry for a module, which lasts for 3 or 4 weeks. For example, module 1 will last in this period. This is a summary of the module, and it's a module about the regional educational system of the Açores. I don't teach digital skills. I teach curriculum theory, organization of educational systems, and so on. My department is education. This is how our virtual learning environment looks like. Panels of entry into the modules, the headline of everything, and a call center on the left. I don't have time to explain all this. The call center facilitates connection between asynchronous instruction and synchronous instruction. In case the student needs to connect with me via Zoom conference, all he has to do is click on button 3. He doesn't have to search for a link in the middle of the emails, okay? This is a shortcut based on our concerns about usability of the environment from the student's point of view. When module 1 finishes, this panel goes to the bottom of the page, and the entry to module 2 becomes visible to the student. This is an example of an article in which I've exposed these issues of design. It's published in an international journal based in Brazil, the importance of design in the development of virtual learning environments. This article that I've written with our colleague Ana Cristina Paulos explores this idea of the importance of asynchronous instruction, the idea that the concept of lecture in a traditional way, something that is very limited in time and in space, is something out of date. So we have to think about teaching and learning without limitations of space and time. The idea of asynchronous learning, which is fundamental if we really want to develop online instruction. So some findings related to MAP projects. Overall, students are happy. Students that who have been exposed to this model are happy. They find it either sufficiently adequate to their needs, very adequate, or totally adequate. This is a small sample. I do this year after year. This is from last year, 20 a class of 25 bachelor students, 22 of them replied, okay? How clear are the guidelines? Sufficiently clear for 41%, very clear for 60%. Have you learned the same, more or much more than you would have learned face-to-face? Roughly the same is the majority. Some of them consider that they learn more this way. If you could go back in time and decide, would you decide to take it online or face-to-face? 81% online. Importance of distance education for the inclusion of more students. 80% said yes, it might help inclusion. Now, with the much bigger sample, we ask the students of secondary education this question: if the program in which you are interested is provided online, would you attend it? It's 40% said no, 47% said yes, and 12% did not answer. Would you attend a bachelor program provided by the University of the Azores face-to-face? Probably no, 23%, probably yes, 24%, very probably yes, 7.5%. 44% did not even reply to this question. The total of students who replied is 360. So the University of the Azores for face-to-face instruction doesn't look very attractive to youth from this perspective. Anyway, at least in our School of Social Sciences and Humanities, we have fulfilled all the vacancies, so we are not so bad. We should not be very worried about this. Anyway, what I would like to highlight here is this. These young students tend to regard online learning as one of the possibilities among other possibilities for the promotion of inclusion. As you can see from this table, 30% of those who replied to the questionnaire consider online learning a good tool for inclusion, but other tools were mentioned by more students. For example, direct support for accommodation was mentioned by 70% of them. Reducing or ending tuition was much more valued by these people who answered to our questionnaire. So online learning is not the most selected solution. Very quickly, some results from faculty questionnaire. We sent a questionnaire to the professors of the University of the Azores. 60 of them replied. Let me just highlight 2 or 3 findings. 93% said yes, online learning can be a good tool for including more young people in higher education. A minority said no. I think it was 4 professors, this minority. This is very important for me, considering what I said about no limitations of time and space. These professors had already the experience of having been forced to teach online, at least during the pandemic. Like it or not, they had to do it for some time. How did they teach? They taught in a predominantly synchronous way, which means connecting Zoom as we did now and teaching predominantly as they would teach face-to-face. Only 20% worked only a very small percentage worked in a predominantly asynchronous way, and 20% worked in an exclusively synchronous way, 18% in a balanced way. What I want to emphasize here is that these professors, our colleagues at the University of the Azores, are not familiar with asynchronous ways of teaching. And this is a huge challenge if we want to take the idea of teaching online seriously, because even according to the Portuguese legislation on distance learning in higher education, we have to teach without limitations of time and space for the students, and that means asynchronous approaches to instruction. So this is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you for your attention. That's all for now.
Thank you so much, Professor Francisco Sousa. Thank you so much. And it was quite interesting to understand about the model MAP that you introduced to us, and how a low-cost logic can be creative and can be also interesting platform for connecting, even though low cost, but connecting students and professors. So thank you so much. And now I will open the debate. So we will probably have some questions from the public, from the virtual public. And I was wondering who wants to go first. Don't be shy.
Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Hi.
Okay.
My name is Diana Coman. Yes, I'm an Erasmus student here at the USA. I'm coming from a Romanian university. And related to what Professor Francisco Sousa said about the professors at the USA being not so very, let's say, technologic, I shall say, yeah, digital. I wonder how come and how can this be improved? Because if we need to teach young students about digital literacy, then we need to be the first ones on knowing how to do that. I don't know, this is my opinion. I'm wondering how can we improve this and what shall be done first? Teaching young students or teaching professors? I'm a teacher as well, an online tutor, so I'm both. So I do comprehend one side and the other one. So This is my direct question to Professor Souza. It's my teacher as well. It's my professor as well. So, and I do appreciate his very much appreciate his MAPE. It's very useful for me, as I said, being a working student. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. I'll give the word to, and this is quite an intriguing question when you have some supposedly professors or teachers with low digital skills than the students. So it's quite interesting. So I'll give the word to Professor Francisco Souza.
Thank you, Pilar, and thank you, Diana. It's a pleasure for me to having Diana here. I confirm she is my student at that same course that I mentioned, Organization of Educational Systems. But Diana is, let's say, an out-of-the-box student, an international student with experience in many countries, a very international student. And in order for us to understand the whole context, I must say that I'm also the mobility coordinator of my school, the School of Social Sciences and Humanities, and I would like that more Azorean students have the mindset of Diana in terms of wanting to go abroad and participating in Erasmus program and so on. Additionally, Diana has experience as a teacher, and she is teaching online as she is living in San Miguel for at least one semester at the same time as she is taking courses at the university. So, directly related to Diana's question, it's not an easy question. Besides collecting data through that questionnaire that I mentioned, part of my efforts in the context of my current responsibilities has been meeting with leaders of academic programs in the university, in the School of Social Sciences and Humanities, trying to understand to what extent can we do something else besides what we have already done in terms of online education. And for me, it's clear now from data that I've collected through conducting a meeting with the leaders of academic programs that there is only one master's program at our university that has potential for taking a step further in the near future, which is the Master in Philosophy for Children, because this master's program has been attended mostly by students who don't live in San Miguel, and many of them have never been in San Miguel Island. So again, this is evidence that it is the students, it is, well, some of the students from this program are not so young, but it's the users who can push things ahead. The pressure for this course to become more involved in online activities came from the users. More and more people wanting to attend this program, and people who cannot make it face-to-face in San Miguel. And that is what has kept this program alive. So I think this program has some potential. I work closely with the leader of this program, Professor Magda. For the other programs, I think Diana is right. How can we teach digital literacy to students if we as faculty don't develop our own digital skills? Again, I don't teach digital skills. I teach curriculum theory, organization of educational systems, and so on. I think this reflection has to go on, And at some point, decision makers will have to decide on this. As I said some minutes ago, fortunately, we've had enough students, at least for bachelor programs. So maybe this is not a problem. Maybe most of us are comfortable in our comfort zones, and face-to-face instruction is fine, and we are not forced to do online teaching. End of the story, except for some exceptional cases. So we have to decide, do we want to remain in that comfort zone? If we don't want, obviously more training is needed on digital skills for the faculty. Okay, before I keep my mouth shut and send the words back to Pilar and Maria, I would like not really to raise a question, but to connect with the other speakers. I noticed, and I think this is an important detail. All of us, the three of us, somehow mentioned the importance of users' participation, youth participation. Maria spoke about designing with the youth. Sarah spoke about the next step is participation and the difficulty in forming opinions for bringing them to an online environment. I also face these difficulties. I have more difficulties with bachelor students than with master students, because master students tend to be more mature. Involving students in a discussion through a forum is easier with older students. So I also felt that difficulty, Sarah. So I tried at the same time to reply to Diana. Thank you for your questions. And at the same time, I tried to raise another question for debate.
Thank you so much. So I'll pass the word to Professor Maria Stoilova.
Thank you very much, Pilar. Just to say, I'm not a professor, I'm only a doctor. Maybe it's in the future, but not to overclaim my position. Diana, thank you very much for the question. I know you asked it as a local question, but I think you've tapped on a global issue here, because whenever we speak to any educators, they feel that they're not prepared enough to meet the young people's demands, that young people are always on the forefront of using digital technologies. We are often not even aware of how digital technologies are changing lives. What are the impacts? What are the risks? We are almost like catching up with young people all the time, and it's a huge problem. It's a global problem. When we were speaking about mental health, young people were saying that when they are in therapy, even the people don't ask them, the mental health professionals don't ask them about the digital because they're scared of it. So whatever angle we look at it, and it's not possible to talk to young people anymore. It's not possible to do education without talking about the digital aspect of it. So I do think you are tapping on an issue that needs to be resolved in many areas, with additional training for adults in all sorts of capacity to be able to support the growing, the growing cohort of young people who are now so used to digital technologies that they don't even, if you ask them when they're online and when they're offline, they cannot tell you, they cannot distinguish between the two. So I agree with Professor Souza that we need to pick the game. It's no longer possible to just be offline and not talk about these issues in education or in mental health environment, in any of those environments. And if I can respond to the bigger question that connects the two talks as well, I think we've all kind of spoken from different angles, but raised the issues that these things don't happen automatically. They require a lot of efforts. Whether it's promoting participation of young people, whether it's promoting inclusion, or participation in sort of geographical and educational terms, or whether it's the development of the digital skills that they need to be able to do all these things. it doesn't happen automatically. It's not enough to let young people be online and expect them to have all the benefits. There's a lot of work, there's a lot of scaffolding that needs to be done there. There's a lot of existing inequalities which impact on all this that we need to be aware of, and we need to make sure that digital doesn't replicate or magnify the existing inequalities that we have. So I think this is what I took from the 3 talks, that we still have a lot of work to do, and we can't sit and expect that these things will happen by themselves.
Thank you so much, Maria. I'll pass the word to Ian.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Irina. I'm professor at the University of Extremadura, but I'm actually now doing a mobility, how do you say it in English? A stay. I'm in University of Açores right now. And I'm also a professor in a teacher training college. I'm very worried about the way we teach children. I'm a mother too, so I'm worried about that because I teach future teachers, and I teach my own kids. And I want to thank you, to all of you, all the speakers, for this interesting debate. And I'm going just to take or to underline one concept that Maria just have said, that it's scaffolding. Like what it comes to me when I was listening to all of you, and above all into Maria's talk and Sara Pereira's talk, is that we are facing here just not just something that has to do with media literacy, but also with the moral development of our citizens, because they are citizens, like children are actual citizens, not future citizens. And what comes into my mind is that we are expecting they do different kind of things in the media when like what we have to. Sorry, I'm trying to put order in my head, in my thoughts. But when you I have a lot of experience going to the schools to observe schools, to observe how teachers perform in schools and how do students perform in schools. And what worries to me is that we still have classes where students spend the 95% of their time sitting in their sites, just listening to the adults, what adults have to say. And nowadays we do know that all the benefits of active methodologies have in children, and above all in the way they communicate with each other, in the way they can negotiate in the communication, in the way they can criticize each other in a constructive way and not in a destructive way. So if we do not do this kind of practices, if we do not have this kind of practices in our schools, where they are not in online practices, but in the presential practices, how do they are going to transmit this? How do they are going to perform in online practices? The same way, okay? They are so for me one of the main focus it's on teaching. How do we teach nowadays, and how do we teach children to use this tool that happens to be very important in our society? Just that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irina. Thank you so much for your words and insights. And I think Sara will have some answers probably.
Okay, thank you for these questions, and they are very challenging in thinking in all of these and in our work and in all that we need to do with the children and the young people. And perhaps I would like to add something to Diana intervention, because I think it's very important that we include this digital and media literacy in teachers training. In the education courses, not only in the education course. For instance, here at the University of me, in my department, the communication, the science, the communication department, we have also media literacy for the future communication professionals, journalists, and advertisers, and so on. So it's I think it's a very important dimension today in our training for us as citizens. But here at the University of Minho, some years ago, I don't remember now the year, but the media literacy was included in the teachers training, in the initial teachers training, but with the Bologna process, this training disappeared from the curricular plans of the teachers. I don't know what is happening now at these at other universities. I don't know what is happening, for instance, in the University of Açores. Perhaps it's important. It's good to know here. But here at my university, well, in the education school, in education faculty, you have the approach of technologies in education, but it's educational technology is not with this perspective of digital and media literacy. It's a different perspective, okay? It's a different vision. It's important, but it's not, for me, it's not enough. So I think if you want that teachers teach their students these competencies, we need to include also this training in their initial training. And I think it's very important. And this runs also for another reflection that I think you need here, at least here in Portugal, I think you need more policies to support our work, because of course it's important that we do all the work we do in research and intervention, but sometimes I think that we don't have a policy that support our work and make this work more consistent. Sometimes the work is casuistic, is based on the militancy of the teachers at schools, and we need more strong policy that support all this work and encourage teachers and other actors to promote this work with children and young people. And so Irina, I totally agree with you. It's also about what you teach, not only in the basic or secondary schools, but also at the university. I think it's very important the opportunities that we give to these to children and young people to have a voice, to give their opinion, the opportunity that you to listen to them and to their interests and to their needs, because sometimes you are the adults that are thinking all the plans for them, but they also need to be listened to. Well, this is my opinion, because I think it's very, very important to consider all the opinions, even from these youngest. But I also have a question for our colleague Francisco, because Francisco, you mentioned that the platform that it is, I think it's very interesting, all the contents that you show to us. But you mentioned something that for me it's important, because it's also a concern that I had in the past. That is, you say that well, this platform is not so interesting like other platforms, so like social networks, Instagram or so on. So do you think this is a problem for the success of your platform? Do you think that the logics are very different, and they are very different, or do you think that you should do something in order to well, to work in a way that this platform are more close to the logic of the social networks in terms of the logics and the relations with the public? I don't know. It's a old question for me, because we tried in past to do a platform for young people, and it didn't result, because well, it's not good for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So, Francisco.
Okay. That's a very interesting question, Sarah. When we develop an educational intervention, including, for example, a virtual learning environment, but it could be another thing, for example, an app for a cell phone or anything, but with an educational purpose. Experts usually consider that we have to take three main aspects into consideration. One of them is validity. We are structures of higher education. We value the scientific rigor, accurateness of what we do, our content. It has to be valid from that aspect. This is one thing. Another thing is effectiveness. Do students really learn what they are supposed to learn? Do they learn at least the same as they would learn face-to-face? That's one of the things that I always include in my questionnaires. It's an issue of effectiveness. And a third issue is an issue of usability. Any product that we design, those who work for industry know that better than us. Anything that we build should be usable in terms of user-friendly. So the easiness with which the student navigates in the environment is an important issue. Does that mean that it has to be more colorful? Not necessarily. And I think that I understand the deep meaning of your question. Our platforms for instruction, especially in terms of formal education, do not have to compete with platforms that are used by youth for entertainment, for having fun with their friends and so on. It's a different battle, okay? So I think we don't have to be obsessed about competing with those other media in that aspect. It's for instruction, and students know that one thing is studying, another thing is having fun with friends. Does that mean that we should neglect the design? No, usability is important, and the use of color and shape is part of the design process. So the fact that the panels of entry into different modules within the virtual learning environment is an important issue. Consistency of the design, not designing module 1 in a very different way from module 2. These things are important in order to help the student not to get lost in the environment. The images we use, the colors, the shape, simple things that we may learn from very basic training in graphic design, hot colors for highlighting the main issues, light colors in the background, and so on. Those things do have some importance.
Thank you so much, Francisca. I think we're going to have another question from Diana.
No, this was not a question, just an intervention saying about, as I'm a user of Francisco Souza's platform, like the models and everything, it does not compete with the social media, and that's very good because students, myself in this case, needs to have a different view. Okay, so we need to be used to the fact that, okay, social media has a layout, education has a different layout, so they don't need to be in somehow connected visually. Okay, they need to have, this is my opinion, obviously my experience, so I think we should differentiate them clearly. This is all. Thank you everyone for this beautiful webinar. It was very, very useful. I will have to leave now because I'll have a class, so I will just leave the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Diana, for being with us today. Thank you so much. And
thank you for organizing.
Thank you so much. And I think we're just in time of our dinner, so dinner time. So I just would like to thank everyone, because we have thank you especially our speakers, our 3 speakers, and everyone that made part of this webinar and to be part of it and to be part of the discussions, because we had really interesting discussions. And I think one point that we have to point out, and it's we have to listen to young people. We have to fully empower them of their citizenship. We have to create, I'm not an expert on that, but we have to be able to connect non-formal and formal education institutions to improve these kind of skills, citizen skills in students, in young people, children, young people, because we need them and to build, and our democracies are passing fragile times, and we need to have strong, critical, opinionative young people to know and to build our democracy, be part of our democracies and to build our democracy, obviously with no fears. And just a quick note to Maria, there's a really interesting book, The Monarchy of Fear by Martin Nussbaum, and she really talks about these anxieties and these fears of young people in the digital platforms. So we need to overcome that. We really need them to do that. And thank you so much for the 3 of you to be working on that and to be part of this process, because your input, scientific input, is incredibly important to build this better society. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great supper, a great dinner. And it was a great pleasure. Next time, I promise we'll be meeting here in the Azores during summertime, so you can spend some really nice time with us. So thank you so much for your presence. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pilar. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Adeus a todos.